I recently did a video where I ranked all the logos in the ACC, and I figured it was about time that I branched out to other conferences. So why not rank the logos in the best conference in the country, the SEC? They have some of the best teams in the country, but do they have the best logos? We'll see. Before I dive in, please sit back, relax, like, comment, subscribe, and let's go ahead and get right into it. So starting at the very bottom of the list, I have none other than the Vanderbilt Commodores. They went through a bit of a glow down aesthetically. Meanwhile, their quality of football has actually had a glow up. So maybe it was the worst branding that they actually needed to be a better football team. Who knows? But I know that I am not a fan of this uninspired logo. A few interesting things that Vanderbilt did have going for it in their old logo got stripped away in favor of a more modern and soulless look. I told you guys in my last video that I am not a fan of the boring gold and black letter logos, and this is just another one of those. So sure, it has a bit more flair with the gradient on the V in the gold section there, and technically it is clean, it's bold, and it's legible, but it just has no personality or anything that makes it unique. No connection to the mascot or the location, and not even the small design elements like the serifs to give it a more academic feel. Somehow it manages to fail to be academic or athletic looking. It's pretty bland, it's bad, so hopefully one day this will be traded in for a better logo one day, or even revert back to the original logo. Not that the OG was great, but it was much better than this. I think that ChatGPT honestly could have made a better logo than this, and let's go ahead and test that out. So I'm going to pull up ChatGPT, design a better logo than the current one, and then I'll put up what it came up with, and you guys can be the judge of whether it's better or not. Probably is better. We'll see. Anyways, at number 15, I have Mississippi State, and they're not too much farther ahead here. My main complaint about this logo is the color scheme. I'm just not a fan of that maroon look, especially when paired with another more muted color like this gray they use. Like I said, very muted, does not stand out. In my opinion, it is just ugly. I can appreciate the banner across the M. It at least gives a little bit of personality there, but it also makes the M less clear and legible. Plus, it doesn't have much depth to support the banner look, but maybe I'm looking a little too deep into that. On one hand, it does feel very collegiate, but it does not do much to stand out. It's generic and it's dated. It kind of reminds me of the logo that high school would use, but my issue is mainly just the color scheme. The design is fine, I guess. I'm sure that some people who are a fan of the color scheme or are indifferent will like it because design-wise, it actually isn't that bad. But me personally, no thanks. I'm glad that they opted to use a script logo for their helmets because I find that logo way better than this one. At number 14, I have LSU, and it's pretty rare that a team that I think very highly from a branding perspective would be so low on a logo tier list, but here we are. LSU has some incredible colors, maybe my favorite colors in the whole conference, and that does have a positive effect on the logo, but from a design perspective, it's kind of the opposite of Mississippi State because the logo has been stripped down to the least interesting part of it. They took out all the connection to the actual tiger and opted for solely an acronym-based logo. And the letters look great when paired with other things, as is evident with several other versions of this logo over the years, but I don't think it's as strong by itself. Sure, the font of the lettering is very unique to LSU. It's consistent, and again, the color scheme is great, but it just does not elevate the logo. It wasn't created to stand alone, and that really shows. It almost looks like the kind of logo an SCS team would wear. It does not really represent a brand as big as LSU very well. It's not imposing, it's not intimidating, and it really just isn't all that iconic. It seems like even LSU knows it can't carry its own weight. It does not appear on the midfield or on the helmet. In fact, both the midfield logo and the helmet logo are far superior, so I find it odd that they stick with these letter logos as their primary logo. It really only shows up on graphics and on people's t-shirts, so bring the tiger back, please. And at 13, I have Kentucky. I am not a huge fan of interlocking letter logos like this, which I'm pretty sure will get me in some heated waters in the SEC. I will say I love the color scheme of this logo. Royal blue is probably my favorite color, but design-wise, it's pretty weak. It's pretty awkward, even for an interlocking logo. The proportions and the letters are a bit too smushed and odd. The U and the K just fit together pretty awkwardly, and it makes the logo look a bit busier than it should. It does have a nice edge where the U fits perfectly against that K, but overall, it just does not work for me, so the royal blue cannot save this logo from reaching my top 10. At number 12, I have Oklahoma, and I'm going to catch a lot of flack for this one because it definitely is an iconic logo, but it's just not for me. It is like the interlocking letter logo, and it has virtually gone unchanged for a very long time. It is timeless and technically a very strong logo, but again, I am not a fan of the color scheme personally. And like I said with Kentucky's logo, I am not a huge fan of the interlocking letter design. So while this one is unique because it is iconic, it's not very unique design-wise. These type of logos are everywhere, and they just feel very generic and boring to me. It's just two black letters overlaid on top of each other. Also, this specific one, I've always thought that the interlocking letters in the logo make the O look like a Q, since there's nothing to separate the letters like some kind of outline. So it looks like a combined letter scheme that rather than an overlapping letter scheme. Just a nitpick, but still. But one of the cool features about this logo that I discovered, and I'm not even sure if this is intentional or not, but the negative space in the O looks like the horns down gesture, which is pretty interesting because the Longhorns are the rivals. That's just a really cool, unique detail that I think is in there. Plus, it's much cleaner than the Kentucky logo. The proportions work, and the O and the U fit together much less awkwardly. So still, if this logo belonged to a less iconic team, people would not feel as strongly about it, but I am just looking at it from a personal opinion perspective, and I'm just not a huge fan. At number 11, I have Auburn. Another pretty iconic logo that a lot of people would probably have a lot higher, but I personally cannot justify putting it any higher. Again, it has a nice color scheme with some great contrast on the navy blue and the bright orange, but again, it's just overlapping letters at the end of the day. And sure, it has a much heavier and stronger feel that makes it stand out, but what takes away from this logo, in my opinion, is once again the proportions. The U is stretched way too wide to make sense to me. It does create a very unique and interesting shape that no other team has, but unique is not always a good thing, and it definitely is not a good thing in this logo. It's a good logo overall, but I just don't think it's a great one. At number 10, I have my Georgia Bulldogs, the Super G. I went to Georgia. I love being part of the G, but let's be honest. This is not the greatest logo. Sure, it has an imposing and strong presence to it, and it is iconic, but there are several flaws to it. For one, it's not even unique. Georgia had to pay the Packers for the right to use it, so they automatically lose points for lack of creativity. And besides that, it definitely has weird and stretched proportions. It just is a super stretched G to the point where it makes a full oval. I do like the color scheme quite a bit. I've talked about it before, but red and black almost always work as a color scheme, and it definitely does here. The solid black fill for the G makes it feel pretty powerful, and the use of negative space within the G is nice, and the red outline pulls it all together, but I simply cannot justify it being any higher. I did not like the logo before I went to school there, and while I warmed up to it while I was there, it still does not do it for me. I find it pretty boring, bland, and again, not very unique. I much prefer the classic Bulldog look, but the Super G has become very iconic for Georgia, so I doubt it will ever go away. At number 9, I have Alabama, and it pains me to put Alabama above Georgia in any sense, but their logo is clearly the better logo. While its design isn't as intimidating or imposing, the team that wears it definitely is. It definitely is an iconic logo that is synonymous with winning. And while I do not love the crimson color on the logos, I do like the design of the script A. I'm a sucker for a script logo in general, and I do prefer full words in script rather than a single letter, but it is still a better option than most single-letter logos. I do think Alabama's logo seems awfully derivative of the Atlanta Braves logo or even the Oakland A's, so it's hard to call it unique, but it definitely is clean. It has flow, it has motion, energy, and it is timeless. It blends modern and traditional so well, and like with so many of the single-color logos, it's very versatile. That's why it's one of the best single-letter logos in the SEC behind only one, and that's number 8, Tennessee. The Tennessee Power T is my favorite single-letter logo in the SEC. It's strong, it's imposing, it's iconic, and while I know Georgia fans will hate me for this, the orange is awesome. It stands out so well. I love it. The thick stroke gives it visual authority, and the wide stance gives it stability. The specific typeface is also very unique, although I will point out it's a bit too heavy, which throws the balance off a little bit. The top of the T is way wider than the base, so that's really the only negative I have for it. It's a simple black letter, but it has some more flair, and again, it's a very versatile logo. It looks great in orange or white. It's got perfect symmetry. It's super clean, super solid logo, simple, memorable, and instantly recognizable. At number 7, I have Texas A&M. And the first thing I want to do is point out the elephant in the room. We live in America. This is an American sport. And in America, we read left to right. So if your school is Texas A&M, why have the logo read ATM? Although, oddly, it kind of works for the Aggies considering how much oil money they have. With that rant aside, the logo itself is actually pretty nice. I like the bevel on the T. I almost wish the other letters had that bevel too, but that may make it look a little too busy and make the T less pronounced. Anyways, I like that the T looks like a big oil rig almost. Not sure if that was intentional, but as I mentioned earlier, Oil is a big deal there, so it would definitely fit the brand, and it adds some visual flair for me. And I love that they placed the logo inside the outline of the state of Texas. I think that makes the logo a lot more interesting. It connects it to the location and the school, other than just the monogram. That feels far less unique. And as someone who used to live in Texas, there's a lot of pride in all things Texan, including the outline of the state especially. So that outline carries a lot of weight here, even if it emphasizes the monogram portion of the logo and scales it down. As for the color scheme, I can't tell you why, but I prefer it significantly to Mississippi State's color scheme, even though it's very, very similar. I think it's because they went with the white instead of gray as the accent color. That provides a lot more contrast and makes the logo feel a lot less muted. Overall, I think it's a very clean logo. It's a unique way to do a monogram logo, and it stands out from the rest, even if it reads a bit funky with a T being in the middle. But from a design perspective, it does make the logo feel more balanced and promotional. At number 6, I have South Carolina. Now, this logo is pretty conflicting for me because if I just sit down and look at this logo, I love it. It has a really cool looking mascot incorporated into it, and I really like the red and the black color combo, even if I do think the shade of the red is too dark to the point where there are some details that are lost here. There just isn't as much contrast to make the juxtaposition work, but what I really think hurts this logo is how busy it is. It is so much going on that it's really hard to pick a focal point. There's crazy tails, and then the neck, the tiny head. Heck, for the longest time, I thought that the neck of the chicken was the head. It's a logo that kind of competes with itself. It's not very legible, especially at game speed, and it really only looks clear at larger scales, and even then, it kind of doesn't. And I love how wild and aggressive the Gamecock looks, but the proportions feel way off. Also, you have this large C behind it, which adds more busyness and forces this thin outline on the Gamecock portion. I think the logo would be better if the C was removed, but even still, even with how busy and how hard to read the logo may be, I still love how unique it is. Like I said, it looks really cool when you stop and just look at it, and I'm a sucker for a good mascot-based logo, especially when they use a full animal, not just a head, but it's false to prevent me from placing it any higher. At number 5, I have Missouri, and there are plenty of Tiger logos and mascots throughout college athletics, so you have to get creative to stand out, and I think Mizzou just does enough to do that. Obviously, they get points for me for actually implementing the Tiger, unlike Auburn and LSU, which is why they are lower on this list. But I also think that they did a great job with the design of the Tiger here. It manages to look very fierce without a ton of details. And the color contrast works, I think, really well to make this a really dramatic logo. Black and yellow as a color scheme almost always works, like black and red, and I think it's perfect here. I also like that the oval complements the tiger. I like how the tiger chin breaks the oval a little bit, and the ears of the tiger are just pinned back. This tiger looks actually a little bit more realistic than a lot of other tiger logos. It's not quite as cartoony, and it reminds me a bit of Penn State's logo in a way, but obviously with a lot more detail and line work going on here. And once again, not sure if it's intentional, but the way that the stripes on the tiger are designed makes it look like there's an M integrated into the logo overall. The logo is strong, it's dynamic, and it is unique, so I like it. Number 4, I have Ole Miss. And like I said earlier, I am a sucker for good script logos, and Ole Miss has one of the best. Not only do I really like the specific look of the lettering, I think it flows really nicely. It almost has an italicized look, which gives it a sense of energy. I really like the color scheme. The red looks great with the navy blue accent. It feels nice. It feels classic. Just a super clean logo that is instantly recognizable. The only real critique I have is that the top left section of the M almost looks like it's supposed to be an accent over the E, but that's really just a nitpick. I like this logo a lot. I feel like it fits the brand of the school really well, and it looks great on the powder blue helmet. Now, here's where it gets extra hard because I love all 3 of the next logos, and it's really hard to put them in a discernible order, but I'm going to try. At number 3, I have Arkansas. This is such a badass logo. I did not know a pig could look so dang cool. You know I love a good mascot-centric logo, and the Razorback is one of the best in the sport. It's just so aggressive and intimidating. It has a lot of motion with a literal mid-charged Razorback, and I love how they made the hair on the Razorback look pointed and sharp considering the name is Razorbacks. It's just such an awesome design. I love the swirl of the tail, the pinned back ears, the angry expression in the eyes, all of it. And it looks a whole lot better than a caveman art that they used for their prior logos. The only critique I really have is the legs. Obviously, the front legs are behind the back legs because it's running, but it kind of looks like it has no front legs at first glance. Just a bit awkward proportionally, but still one of my favorite logos in all of college football. It has the perfect amount of detail and aggression, and again, I think the red and black color scheme works really, really well. And at number 2, the Florida Gators. What better mascot for a team in Florida than a Gator? Unfortunately, or I guess fortunately in my case, because I hate the Gators, but unfortunately for them, it's still the second best mascot in their state. But you can hear more about that in my last logo video. Go Noles. Anyways, Florida has an incredible logo that is very unique and just flat out awesome. It has a more cartoonish look, but it works so well. Such a fierce logo with a ton of personality. I love the crooked mouth, the sharp teeth, the intimidating expression, all of it. This is how you do a mascot-centric logo. It is perfectly readable. None of the details really get lost in here. It's almost perfect, but I do have a few critiques. First off, I don't love how the front 3 teeth look compared to the rest of the teeth. I know it's trying to go for depth here, but proportionally and anatomically, it does not work at all. The second thing I have an issue with is the colors. Orange and blue go together pretty well, but the green on the Gator kind of throws the whole balance off. But I do really like the green Gator. It just doesn't fit with the blue and the orange. It's just too many vibrant colors, I think. I almost wish Florida had a different color scheme that was more accommodating to that shade of green, like black or something, but this is what they're working with. Lastly, I am not sure what is going on with the tongue, or even if that is a tongue. If it isn't, it's very weird placement for a random orange section, but if it is, it's kind of odd that the tongue is bright orange and in proportions look way out for that tongue where it should be, but just way too big, whereas the Gator tongues usually lay a lot flatter from what I know, but that's a really small detail. And if you're wondering why so many logos look like this, or Missouri's, like Missouri's with the oval shape, it's because it gives a badge type look that works really well on uniforms and merchandise. Anyways, an incredible logo. It's hard to top, but one logo in the conference does. That's right. At number 1, I have the Texas Longhorns. The best logo in the SEC goes to the newcomers. This takes a bit of a different approach to the mascot motif because it uses a silhouette instead of something that's more detailed. And in this case, it works so well. It's timeless and one of the most iconic logos in sports history. The burnt orange is one of my favorite colors in the sport. In every single way, this logo screams Texas despite having very minimal details. What more could you ask for in a logo? It's super clean, very aesthetically pleasing. It's perfectly symmetrical and it represents the brand so well. When you see that Longhorn logo, it is intimidating. Not because it looks angry or has snarling teeth or because it's charging at you, but because of the pride and history behind it. And the classic logos like this look so incredible on a helmet. That burnt orange Longhorn on a clean white helmet, it just does not get much better than that. It is the best logo in the SEC. That's all for this video, guys. Please make sure that you like, comment, subscribe if you want to see more content like this. And I'll see you next time. Peace.